Hey everyone, for my 100th video, I wanted to do something a little different, so I decided to do a movie review. But, it's a bit more than a review, because I'll be talking about related things as well, so it's more like a movie rant. Just to give you some background, I'm a comic book geek, Marvel Comics in particular. And I used to watch a lot of movies. Working in a cinema, it's just what you do. But a few years ago I started to notice something I couldn't quite put my finger on, other than to say all movies felt the same. I kept noticing the same formula and tropes just being repeated again and again, so everything just became obvious, dull and disappointing. I noticed continuity errors, plot holes and general inconsistencies quite a lot. I seem to have a good eye for detail and am often unapologetically critical. Being a comic book fan, I've slowly lost my faith in big screen adaptations over the years. Notable blows were Catwoman in 2004, and of course X-Men 3 in 2006. If I had a shit list, Halle Berry would be near the top. I literally had to force myself to like X3 because of my love for the comic book character, Jean Grey. Sure, it has its problems, but it could have been saved with some re-editing and dialogue change. So then, X-Men Origins Wolverine came along in 2009, and this was the movie that broke the proverbial camel's back for me. It has so many things wrong with it, that I just decided I had enough, and stopped watching movies. I didn't want to be disappointed anymore. I made a special allowance for the Avengers, but I wasn't going to risk watching my heroes get raped on the big screen while the masses lapped it up. So now there's Wolverine 2, or just the Wolverine. I guess they didn't want to associate it with the first film after it proved to be a disappointment. I didn't want to put any hope into this movie, but I decided I'd watch it, and maybe it would help me overcome my hatred for Hollywood. Plus I thought it might bookend my movie watching hiatus. I generally don't look forward to things, so I had nothing to lose. However, because of the Jean Grey cameo, I was worried I might feel overly protective and find myself trying to like it more than I wanted to. So what did I think of the movie? Mostly, I was bored. A PG-13 rating isn't really appropriate for a character like Wolverine. The original director dropped out of the project after the studio declined an R-rated script. The phrase, respect for the source material, never really applies in Hollywood, because the goal of the studio was to make as much money as possible. A low rating guarantees more viewers as well as deals with fast food chains and toy makers. About halfway through the Wolverine, I really started to ask myself, what is the point of this movie? There are several answers to this, but it seems to be more about the money than anything else. I left the screen fairly disappointed, but I wasn't angry about it. I just thought, whatever. After a day or two, the movie doesn't seem as bad as when I was sat there watching it. So what's good about this movie? The small scale is nice. This is where a lot of superhero movies get it wrong. The threats are usually pretty big, and there's a lot at stake. This movie keeps things more grounded, which I like, but the cheesy looking end fight breaks the tone, which is otherwise fairly consistent and not too over the top like you might expect from other comic book movies. Hugh Jackman simply is Wolverine, so you can't really fault his performance given the script. Likewise, Famke Janssen does a great job as Jean Grey, and I'm glad the role wasn't given to someone else. I'm a massive Jean Grey Phoenix fan, and I approve of the inclusion of her character in this movie. I'll talk more about that later. I liked Ryo Fukushima as Yukio, despite the character being changed to a mutant for no reason. In fact, most of the acting in this movie is good. The only exception would be Svetlana Kodchenkova's campy portrayal of Viper, that I felt didn't really fit with the rest of the characters, but this could have just been the director's fault. What else didn't I like about this movie? The CGI looks cheap in quite a few places. This is because it was cheap compared with other movies. This movie had a budget of $100 million, whereas the first one had a budget of $150 million. And most of the special effects in that are just awful. The villains in this movie are forgettable, and don't really do much, until the end fight. The stakes never really seem very high. Even though Wolverine has no regenerative ability, you don't really feel as though he is actually in mortal danger. I've heard a few people say how this is more character-driven than you'd expect, but I thought a lot more emotion could have been included, with deeper dialogue between Logan and Mariko, so that a love could develop, as well as with Jean, showing Wolverine's soul surgeon, and acting as a mirror to his relationship with Mariko. The biggest issue with comic book movies for comic book fans is the faithfulness to the source material. Now, there's nothing wrong with having completely original stories, based on the characters, or changing a few things, here and there, to give the story a fresh twist. But what often happens with these adaptations, is that the wrong things get changed. Why can't anyone make a big-budget, faithful retelling of a comic book storyline? X-Men Origins and the Wolverine are prime examples of really good stories that have been chewed up and crapped out by bad writers, or writers that don't understand the appeal of the source material. The current movie is based on the original Wolverine Volume 1 comics and has elements from the TV show, Marvel anime, Wolverine. But why the movie makers decide to swap and change characters so much, I just don't understand. The reason why a lot of these stories are so popular is because they're well constructed. So why change it and risk getting it wrong? The answer is because it usually doesn't matter if the studio gets it wrong. People will still pay to watch it, no matter how bad it is, or how far from the original idea it is. It's virtually impossible to kill a franchise. So who cares? Well, I guess I care. I have a few more specific questions about this movie. These may simply be things I missed, so feel free to help me out here. When Wolverine isn't healing properly and retracts his claws, why aren't there open wounds between his knuckles? What's the deal with the Silver Samurai's sword? Was it meant to be red-hot adamantium? If so, wouldn't its molecular bonds be weaker than the cold adamantium of Wolverine's claws? Or was it some magical sword? In the comics, the Silver Samurai is a mutant, and is able to charge his blade to cut through anything. Well, anything except adamantium. But, Yoshida isn't a mutant, so what's the deal with the sword? And why make a magic sword that could be activated by just about anyone? The two-handed thing would have been nice, had the script not spelled it out to the audience. But wouldn't you make the sword so it only worked when it was held by the robot suit? You know, the robot suit you're living inside. Why give it a separate power supply? What if you dropped it somehow? Or it was stolen? It would have been pointless building your suit out of adamantium, because they could just cut it open. And that's exactly what happens. Why did Yoshida get younger? Wolverine's mutation doesn't work that way. His regenerative ability means that he ages much slower, but while still in his mutation, allow Yoshida to physically revert to the age he was before he suffered from radiation sickness. Wolverine's genetic differences also give him enhanced senses, feral rage, and an altered skeletal structure. The adamantium was of course added later by the Weapon X project. Did Yoshida know how to extract only the regenerative mutation? Or did he have any of these other abilities? When Rogue Power taps Wolverine, she has these abilities, but maybe Rogue is a special case. If Yoshida had taken the other abilities, he and Wolverine could have had a cool mirror match. Maybe Yoshida can extract the exact genes he wants, and maybe Wolverine's DNA, intermixing with Yoshida's, causes some odd effect that makes him get younger. Who knows? The movie didn't explain. Poison Ivy's role in this movie confuses me. Sorry. Viper's role in this movie confuses me. What was her goal in this movie? Was she simply just working for Yoshida? Did she build the robot bug things? Did she build the robot suit? I went to use the toilet at one point, so I don't know if it was mentioned. Was it her poison, or the bugs, causing Wolverine to lose his healing ability? If it was just the bugs, why make her character a mutant? She isn't one in the comics, and she doesn't need to be. She's pretty badass already. Why was she in this movie at all, if she wasn't anything like the comic book Viper? And why did she shed her skin? I guess that's how she deals with being poisoned, but didn't she say she was immune to every poison? Why does she only shed the skin on her head? Why does all her hair come off, when only a thin layer of skin is removed? How come her eyebrows, eyelashes and makeup remain on her face? I still don't understand why Viper was a mutant at all. In the movie, she kills her victims with deadly breath and by spitting on them. In the comics, she wore poison-tipped fangs, which are way cooler and sexier. Why isn't Viper Japanese? Why is she blonde? Is it just me, or is there a common miscasting issue with blonde female comic book characters? Why don't Japanese-speaking characters always speak Japanese when talking to each other? I know it's because people won't want to read subtitles all the time, but it just seems a bit inconsistent in the movie. In the comics, Wolverine speaks Japanese. He's old and well-traveled. It's unlikely any script writer would make Hugh Jackman learn mostly Japanese dialogue, but it could have been included that he understands the language. I missed a couple of minutes at the start of this movie, and I don't really want to watch X-Men Origins again, but did Wolverine recover the memories he lost as part of the Weapon X project? If he hasn't recovered his memories, how did he recognize Yoshida? Maybe he just suddenly remembered, or maybe Jean had some influence, so that he'd follow the path that would eventually lead to him forgiving himself for her death. What was Wolverine's problem? I guess he didn't want to be the Wolverine, because he was a killing machine and was worried he'd kill the wrong people. But when has he ever killed the wrong person? He knew he had to kill Jean, and he's never really lost it and gone full-on berserker, so what's his problem? Maybe the movie version of Wolverine is just more emotionally fragile than I expect from the character. By the end of the movie, he realizes it's okay, so long as he only kills the right people, but that's all he's been doing anyway, so it doesn't really make any sense. So what could have been done differently? The ending is a bit of a letdown. It's okay, it just doesn't fit right. There was no need for the standard CGI and boss. I haven't seen it, but I think Yoshida wears special armor to fight Wolverine in the anime TV show. Otherwise, it's generally as a legitimate mutant son, Harada, that is the Silver Samurai. Why was the Silver Samurai an old guy in a robot suit, instead of the samurai in the silver suit? Why couldn't Mariko have a half-brother that was an expert in martial arts and swordsmanship, that was trying to catch Wolverine in order to prolong his father's life? No need for a robot suit, just awesome hand-to-hand fight sequences. He could even have a mutation for a newly emerging ability he can't quite control, making him a bigger threat further into the movie, and causing more collateral damage in the process. He could reach a frenzy, and bring Wolverine to the point of near death, where then Wolverine sees Jean, and asks her for help. She says something enigmatic about death or something, and then the Silver Samurai has a moment of clarity. Maybe he sees a woman that looks like his dead mother, or Jean, or both, and realizes that there's no honor in trying to kill Wolverine. They exchange dialogue, Wolverine makes a joke, they make out for a bit, and then decide to confront Viper or whatever, because she's been experimenting on mutants or something, stealing their abilities and selling them to criminal organizations. Viper could have been manipulating Harada into finding Wolverine, because she can give his healing ability to his father, for a price. She could also say it was Wolverine's fault that his dad was sick. But later, he could understand that Wolverine saved his father's life in the first place. Viper could have given Harada's own mutant ability as well. In the comics, she also has a teleportation device. She could give this to Harada when he becomes the Silver Samurai, making him an even greater adversary for Wolverine, but eventually, all these things would be used against her. I felt a lack of emotion between Logan and Mariko. A way around this could have been to give her and Wolverine more scenes, to build some chemistry. As it is, Logan spends more time with Yukio. Mariko could have reminded Logan of Jean Grey, adding a layer of subtext to their relationship. Is he in love with her? Or does she just remind him of someone he's lost? I guess this may have been implied, but could have been developed further. I'm surprised there weren't any references to red hair. I know, Yukio and red hair, but there wasn't any deeper significance to it in the movie. Despite Yukio being far more interesting in the movie than Mariko, making her a badass assassin working for Yoshida, and not a mutant would have worked better. and allowed Mariko and Logan more screen time. Once their relationship had blossomed, Mariko could have been murdered, therefore giving Wolverine some rage and a reason to kill, as well as being more emotionally engaging for the audience.